I'm going to be talking to another awesome guest. This guest is from another country, UAE, and she's involved in special education.
I wanted to connect with my roots and actually experience my culture, not through others, but myself. So I did my university in Pakistan.
It's kind of shocking, honestly, because I wouldn't expect you to go from a country like UAE to Pakistan to study, because you would expect young people to go somewhere more developed, like built up.
So that when I saw an athlete, he did not have legs at all, but and he won the race. And when I saw that, and behind the scenes, when you're with the athletes and their coaches, you get a lot of insight on how they practice, what are the things that they actually do. Like for a normal athlete as well, it's very difficult, the whole process.
Idea that it's not really about who gets to the top first, it's about getting to the top together.
There's a 45-minute class period dedicated to a subject. You're teaching 5 lessons. The gifted and talented, the special education need, the low achiever, middle achiever, high achiever.
Crisis intervention, is it similar to behavioral intervention? Because this sounds a little more alarming.
All the ideas we had were super cool and they were all a hit. For example, having a pajama day. So you do these good behaviors repetitively for the semester. You get a pajama day. You get a senior camp at school, senior movie night at school, and the word senior is something that they love.
We will have implemented a score update policy at this school where we're having our teachers take the IELTS test every 6 to 10 months, depending on their previous band score. This probably sounds weird. I'm not sure I should be saying that on record here, but
Telling them to improve by 5 marks, the example that you gave, if a student is stuck at 20 out of 40, and they're not doing anything about those students, would be you giving them direct instructions of what you think would work. So you would know that they're lacking in, for example, the speaking aspect. So you would give them strategies that they need to do and submit it to you. So for us, the documented learning plans, we have targets.
all right. Let's save some of it for the podcast. All right. So you tell us when to start. Hey folks, hey everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Astra Muse. I'm your host, Muhammad Ali here. Today, I'm going to be talking to another awesome guest. This guest is from another country, UAE, and she's involved in special education. So if you guys would like to find out more about it, please keep watching. All right, it's time to meet our guest, Ms. Qurat. Ms. Qurat.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Great, thanks. Welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be on the behind the scenes of the podcast.
All right. So this is your first time in Bukhara, right?
Yes.
So how do you like the city so far?
I love it. I landed in Tashkent and I came here. So it's a very different vibe. That's old European and this is old historic. So it's been a good time. The 2 days that I've been here, but it's been great.
Right. And what brings you here? Are you here just to see your brother, Mr. Anas, or
Yeah,
is it?
obviously because he's ending his journey down the line, he would move back somewhere. So I wanted to visit Uzbekistan while he's here, and it's been 2025 for me is the year that I'll travel. So I started with Uzbekistan, and then I'll move into other things, hopefully.
Right. Right. So normally on this podcast, whenever we have guests, we talk a little bit about their, background to give people some context, right? So you're originally from Pakistan, right?
Yes, correct.
You were born in Pakistan, right?
No, I was born in UAE and raised then and there UAE altogether and moved to Pakistan for my university, the 4 years. Because when you're living in a country that, as an expat, right, the thing is you do have connections to your home country, but you don't really know it. And news outlets don't have a really good image of how the country is, everything. So while I was looking for university, There were a lot of factors, but one of those was I wanted to connect with my roots and actually experience my culture, not through others, but myself. So I did my university in Pakistan. So
Right.
that's the only time I've been there for a longer duration.
And at what age did you move to Pakistan for your studies? Was it like when you were about
I
16,
moved
17?
in 2019, so that means I was 19. Yeah,
Right.
19, 20, something like that.
And did you move there by yourself or
Yeah, by myself.
right?
So just for university, it was 4 years. I researched a lot. I knew I wanted to be in the capital where I'm from. And the thing with the capital is that it has a lot of universities, and people from all over Pakistan do move to a couple of cities with good university. So Islamabad was one of them. So it is a place where students from all over the country do come. Students that are expats and living in the Gulf countries do come back to study for uni. So I thought I would enjoy it there, and it is beautiful. You get 4 seasons, which living in Dubai you don't really know. You just know summer, winter, summer. That's it. So I was excited for that. So that's that. The research went into where I'd live, and I just chose to go there.
Right. It's kind of shocking, honestly, because I wouldn't expect you to go from a country like UAE to Pakistan to study, because you would expect young people to go somewhere more developed, like built up for
Yes.
their education.
So I'll tell you more about it. So my schooling was it was in an Arab school, and then like my brother, and then we moved into the British curriculum. So with the British curriculum, there UAE has a lot of curriculums that they teach. So you have the American, you have the British, you have IB, and many others. So with the British, you have year 12 and 13 for your A levels. And then when those students go to uni, they do 3 years of bachelor's because that's how they equate the years of education through around the world. So when I was planning to go to the UK, I knew I'd had to do 3 years of university, and sometimes that does cause an issue. For example, the licensing process of teaching in UAE is super tricky. So sometimes they do not accept a bachelor's that's for 3 years. I mean, obviously, if it is from the UK, there is some leeway because it is the country for education, but otherwise, they wouldn't. And the option I had for university in UAE was one of British universities as well. The problem there was it was a 3 years bachelor's. And I wanted to do psychology. Another issue I was facing was most of the psychology in UAE was business psychology, applied psychology through HR or things like that. We didn't really have a clinical psychology. Now that exposure to special education has come, there's a lot of bachelors that just focus on special education. But I also didn't want to do that.
But how is clinical psychology different from business psychology?
So, clinical psychology is purely clinical. So, like a medical student, you get a diagnostic manual, you have to do clinical researches, clinical rotations, and all of that. With business psychology, it is completely opposite. You do study the foundations that are kind of similar, but while you're in your second year, third year of university, you move on completely to business psychology. For example, a business psychology student would study neurolinguistic language and body language and things like that, or how to sell, or advertisement psychology, things like that. So, how would you sell this product? How would you find a niche? How would you connect to people? Through the business kind of concept. While you move into clinical, it would be more about schizophrenia patients, or do these medicines actually have an effect? For example, antidepressants, do they have a long lasting side effect? Do they work on anxiety? What medications to give where? Obviously, we don't prescribe medicine, that's a psychiatrist after your medical degree. But you need to know these kind of technicalities, which you would miss out if you're doing a business course. And I wouldn't get to study about, all the neurotypical students. And there's two categories: neurotypical, the normal students, neurodivergent, the students that have ADHD, for example, or any other neurodivergentness in them. So those were the things I wanted to focus on.
So, how did your passion for clinical psychology come about?
I think I was really involved in volunteering and community services growing up, even when I was in school. So the first proper internship I got was at a special education school, and I loved it. It was amazing because it's so gratifying to give something to the students. And for a student with special needs, they give it back tenfold. So the love and care you give to them, you get it back tenfold.
And we might want to hear pause and break down what special needs means, because not all people watching this
Yes.
podcast may quite know what that is.
So I'll start with that, I guess. So special education is something that UA really focuses on, and there are students that are labeled neurotypical, so normal students, and then there are students labeled neurodivergent. That means if they have any kind of disabilities or disorders, they could be physical or they could be mental. So physical disabilities would be someone that has a hearing issue. So like even someone that has a hearing aid, cochlear implants, or just a hearing difficulty. Visual difficulties, a lot of people do wear glasses, not that. But people that have, for example, I had a student that didn't have vision in one eye, but had vision in the other. So those, or someone that has any other physical disabilities. That's one category in special education. The other is your mental disabilities or disorders or difficulties. It could be Down syndrome students. It could be students with on the autism spectrum disorder, students with ADHD, students with dyscalculia, which is difficulties in maths, dyslexia, difficulty in reading, and things like that. So when you get into it, it's a vast majority of what kind of issues the students would have. So special education or inclusive education, how we call it in UAE, means to include these students in a normal or a neurotypical classroom. So you change the way you teach so that everyone gets a chance to learn. But there are some students that are on the more severe spectrum. So they cannot be in a neurotypical classroom or a normal classroom. They go to special centers to study. So my first volunteering job was in one of these centers. So that was my first-hand experience, but that wasn't the reason I chose special education or psychology. The turning point, I think, UAE hosted a Special Olympics, and I worked with the athletes that all had special needs. So similarly, they had physical disabilities or mental disabilities. And even during that, the one of the races, it was when you imagine an athlete running or doing track, the one thing you wouldn't think was them not having legs, right? So that when I saw an athlete, he did not have legs at all, and he won the race. And when I saw that, and behind the scenes, when you're with the athletes and their coaches, you get a lot of insight on how they practice, what are the things that they actually do. Like for a normal athlete as well, it's very difficult. The whole process, you train for at least 4 years, and then there's an Olympics, right? So that 4 years of training is definitely there with a lot of neurotypical, like I usually say this to everyone that wants to listen, with students with autism, there's this one thing that clicks and they're geniuses, most of them. So for example, if someone has a lot of good spatial intelligence, so what goes where, they can create 3D models in their head. For example, Dr. Sean Murphy, the fictional character, how he could actually imagine what a human body looks like in his mind. So this is not something that is, obviously it's exaggerated for television, but this is something that autistic students or people do have the ability to see what our eyes can't.
That's actually something I was going to ask you on this podcast. Is being autistic doesn't it's kind can it be kind of a it can be kind of a blessing in disguise, because you're a sort of divergent thinker. You think you perceive the world differently.
True and kind of not true. So autism is it was called thank you. Autism was called autism. So it was autism disorder, or I don't remember the actual word, but it was just autism. You're either diagnosed with it or you don't have it. But later it was changed into ASD, so autism syndrome disorder or autism spectrum. So you fall on, with the spectrum, it could be mild autism, moderate, and severe. So with severe, there's a lot of hindrance with how they communicate. So they might be nonverbal, so they can't speak, but they might be very intelligent with other things. But with someone with a mild autism might not have these giftedness that we kind of think about. Because when we see it televised in the television and everything, we usually think about that they're geniuses and things like that. There's some aspect of it in real life, but not every time. Because autism is a spectrum.
Yeah. I really got this idea from this movie called The Accountant. I'm not sure if you've
Yeah,
watched
I have
it.
seen it.
Yeah, it's starring Ben Affleck. Right?
Yeah.
That guy's a little autistic, and he's got his brother, where he's super genius in math. He can remember date, he can do math just in his head.
But there are cases like that. Even in schools in UAE, in inclusion, we just do not have special education. We have students that are gifted and talented. So a lot of the times we have overlap in students that are in special education, but they are gifted because they are, like you said, geniuses in math, but they will not enter an English class maybe. Because with autism, there's the aspect that a lot of the kids with ASD are nonverbal. So they have some language disabilities, difficulties paired up with autism. So I think math is especially something that autistic students do excel in.
Right, right. So your interest in special education came from helping Olympic athletes, right? It must be so, empowering and inspiring seeing someone without a limb running a race.
It was life changing. It was one of those moments.
It's like a true display of strength. It's a pure display of strength. Like we think we're strong, like we think we're powerful, like we're in good health. But the real display of power is when you are down, when you're sick. Can you still pick yourself up and keep going? And that is real. That is so beautiful.
It was.
That is so beautiful, right? Now I see why you wanted to choose this path. So, your first experience helping people with special needs after Olympics was in Islamabad, right?
Yes.
In a center called Autism Center.
Yeah. So
How did you get this job? It was in 2018, apparently.
Yes. So this was the year that I didn't actually start university, but I was in Pakistan for a little bit of time to because I had a gap year and I did A levels on by myself. So I didn't really go to a full-time school. I self-studied and sat for the exams. So I did travel to Pakistan for a bit during that. I thought it would be like UAE, filled with internship opportunities and things like that, but I had no contacts there, and I didn't really know a lot of people. And now I do understand that there are much more opportunities, but this is a center that was on the same street as the area that I was in. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, let's go there and see what kind of situation is there. Do they need any interns or volunteers? And usually the interns and volunteers they get were like students as well. So that's the idea that I went with because I just wanted to volunteer. But with props to UAE, with the Special Olympics and the training center that I volunteered in, they don't just let you volunteer. They gave us lectures and workshops and what actually is, for example, for the Olympics, we had training after training after training of how to act with the athletes. Because even if they have special needs, they are athletes that excel in something we cannot even think about competing in. So something small, like, for example, if they ask for help, help them, but don't go around just, brushing into people's face and just trying to help them out because they are renowned athletes. If they want help, they'll ask for help. So small things like that to actually understanding like what difficulties they actually face, what kind of athletes we would be getting, and the psychology behind them, and things like that. So when you have that kind of knowledge given to you for free, thanks to UAU, and you go to a place where you get students that have no idea what psychology is, what special needs is. So when I went there to just talk to them, they were like, "Oh, you should work for us." And I was like, I don't want to work because I'm studying, but I would love to volunteer. They were like, okay, fine. I got the most, obviously, the minor role was helping, being an inclusive assistant. So, not an inclusion teacher. For example, you would be the full time teacher dedicated to student A, but I would be assisting them. For example, if you have taught them about, some concept, for example, addition, and you've taught it to them and they have practiced it with you. But with a lot of these kids, you need spaced repetition. So you repeat it and then give them a space, ask them again, repeat it, ask them again until they actually learn it and they can use it on this, scaffold it upwards. So they can use addition to understand subtraction, use that to understand word problems and things like that. So the plan would be created by the teacher. All I had to do was help out the kid with the little thing, spaced repetition, repeating again, playing games, revolving additions and things like that. So it was a very laid back kind of job, but it did give me, imagine the access you're getting as a student of full lesson plans made, understanding the tailored needs for each student. So what people actually did in their last year of university, I did it before my university even began. I've been very blessed, like in that kind of terms.
But I'm guessing in your line of work, you should have a lot of patience.
I do.
So much patience, because I've been teaching for quite a bit now, and I can confirm like how patient and caring, compassionate, and understanding you should be when you walk into the classroom, because it really takes time. The process is so slow compared to other fast-paced professions like business or trading, where things are hectic, and so you really need that patience when you deal with kids with special needs. So, right, especially like when you say you teach them addition and then you have to wait for a little while, and then you ask them again, and then you wait for a little while, and you compare that with my job, where I try to condense and cram as much information as possible in the shortest amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So like I'm picturing myself doing this job, and I I don't know, I would be able to do what you are doing. So a lot of respect for that. Yeah.
Thanks. I feel in general for teachers, I had this conversation with one of my formal principals, was that all teachers need to be psychologically evaluated because not everyone can be a teacher just for the simple reason of patience. And we had a long debate on it. So you're right, even with a normal classroom, the issue in a normal neurotypical classroom is you get students that are very slow, you get students that are really talented. So that itself requires patience because you have to teach, like, I always say this to the teachers that work with me, that you're teaching 5 lessons during your 40-minute period, because there's a 45-minute class period dedicated to a subject. You're teaching 5 lessons: the gifted and talented, the special education need, the low achiever, middle achiever, high achiever. So and during that division as well, you have other divisions. Some are verbal, the inclined, some are, more visually inclined students, and then some needs hands-on activity to understand it. So it's a lot of work. You need to be, it's like a one person running the world kind of thing in one classroom.
Yeah.
So you need to be doing a lot of things, keeping them engaged. And nowadays, due to, reliance on devices and things, I feel like this attention span for students is much lower than it used to be when we were students. So you need to be very quick paced in your class so they don't get bored, but patient and, try to elaborate the lesson so everyone understands. So it's a very difficult job, I think, nowadays to actually teach, but teach well.
Like, how do you really strike that balance between being quick and sometimes taking the time?
So for me, I'm a firm believer in AI. AI helps you a lot. So, tools like Magic School, Chat GPT, and things like that. All you need to do is know what you're teaching. So, for example, let's take the example of addition so everyone understands it. Now, I know I need to teach addition. I know that I'm teaching grade 2, for example, but some students are on a pre-K level, so a KG level, because they have foundational gaps or special education needs or low achievers or something. What I would tell them is use AI to create a pre-lesson game, because everyone has their iPads in schools like Dubai and or some kind of devices, or make sure they log in themselves so there's a scoreboard with their name. You solve it before your lesson so that your mind, there are fancy words for all these techniques, but just for them to actually get engaged and for you to know which students actually know addition, which students you need to work more on, and that's how you pace your lesson. So step one, getting them engaged, and it's very quick pace. Let's do a test. It's a 5 minute thing, so it's fast paced. Everyone wants to see what score they're putting on the scoreboard, because if you connect it to your a projector or a smart board, they can see the scores. Everyone's solving, but everyone sees where they're ranked. That's when you have the baseline for your lesson. So that's something that's quick paced. Then what we believe is differentiated instructions. So, for example, if there are 3 students, one of them is on the lowest rank in the scoreboard. So you know that there is an issue with that student. And then someone that's on the highest rank, they solved everything in 2 seconds. So you know that they have already achieved it. So then it's the strategic part. In schools in UAE, mostly students sit in groups, and there's a baseline test done to make sure that they're in groups. So you don't have people that are just like all the high achievers clubbed together, or just individual students. There's a lot of focus on students building that kind of communication skills, working in groups and things like that. So when you're dividing the tasks in groups, so we've seen a video, for example, on addition. Now this is your task to do. It's easier to go group wise and cater those needs than going to rows of individual student. So I have 5 students that are not doing well. Going to 5 students, my lesson's over. But going to 2 groups and everyone's still engaged. For example, if you're the high achiever and I'm the special ed child, and I've placed them strategically, so I know you're very empathetic and you're patient and you can help. So I know for a fact that you would be actually, having conversation, prompting it, doing the group work, explaining it to him. For example, the problem that we had to solve was Jane has 3 apples and Alex has 2 oranges. So can we club them together in addition under what? There's a lot of connect to the world. So when in UA, when you're learning math, you're also learning, for example, English. You're learning, if the things are different things. So, for example, that's the task. So I know for a fact that that's a conversation starter, because the students will be talking about, can we actually add apple and oranges? This is a grade 2, 1 level I'm talking about. So these are the kind of things that I know my students will be engaged, so there's no behavior issue. And I'll be going to this batch to, kind of give them maybe actually hands-on things to add with. For example, there is the counters that you have, or you could get, fake fruits if you're using those in lessons. And schools in UA are very generous with these things. For example, if I have a resource room and you as a teacher need to borrow molecules to practice chemistry, I have a molecule set, and you would just sign it off and be like, I'm using it in my class from this hour to this hour, and if any other teacher wants to book it, they can book it afterwards. So it is giving to the teachers and taking it back. So there's a lot of give and take. So I think it's the teacher. Lesson planning is essential. If you have not planned out your lesson, if you don't get to know your students, you can't be strategic in the way of how to be fast paced and how to be, slow it down.
Yeah, well, this is a lot to take in, and well, one of the things that that really resonates with me, you mentioned, is having mixed ability classes where you have high achievers and low achievers sitting together. And this is one of the things we send out to our teachers. When we send out instructions, we tell our teachers is, so you have those students who top the list, they ranked highest, they got impressive results, and then you have those students who are chronically lagging behind. So what you do is you pair them up. So you have the high achieving students work with low achievers. So this way, so you kind of foster the idea that it's not really about who gets to the top first. It's about getting to the top together, right?
Yeah.
So it's something we do in a traditional class as well, and works very well, right?
It does.
And fosters the camaraderie and the help, compassion, and care, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it is a bit tricky because you're kind of, the student that is actually high achieving, you're not giving them enrichment. So you're not giving them additional tasks to even exceed the level on they're at because they have to help out a student that's lagging behind. So we did have that kind of issue a lot. So for example,
So what do you do about this problem then?
so for that kind of things, we need to, like, I know one of my students, he's super gifted and I want to work on, just taking him beyond classroom, so real life application questions and everything. And he can't solve that if he is helping out a student. So what I would do is create what a good one looks like. So having a sample on the board or having a sample there. And sometimes, honestly, the people that are more helpful to a student are the middle achievers. And people usually forget the middle achievers because they're right there. So I like to use the middle achievers to pair them with the low achievers instead of the high achievers. Because the middle achievers, they need enrichment as well, right? So how are you making sure that they are not stuck in the middle achiever level? It's when they are repeating instructions to a low achiever or re-explaining everything. So that's how you enrich them, and that's how you're enriching the gifted as well. Because with the gifted student, if you're teaching them, for example, if it's a science lesson, for them it would be, can you research a hypothetical situation? So you're giving them the enrichment they need to, exceed the classroom expectation. With the middle achiever level, you want them to reach the high achiever levels. So for them to actually embed the concepts, they would need to repeat the concepts. There are a lot of strategies, but this is something that I think works really well in a traditional classroom.
How do you go about a situation where you ask a high achiever to help a low achieving student and they don't like this idea, right? They're opposed. They say, I don't want to do it.
The thing is, the teachers are the keys. We, as senior leadership, as managing staff, we don't know the student, right? When you used to teach, you would know which student would actually help out and which wouldn't. Some of the high achievers are not empathetic enough to actually help someone out. So it comes a lot from the teacher. So you need to be on good terms with the teacher and give them resources to actually understand their students.
And do you think it's a good idea to force a student to help another one?
No.
Just to make them more empathetic and caring?
I mean, it doesn't, then you don't need to go full throttle into it, right? You need to work your way around it. For example, you start with that they will solve it, you correct it and explain what they're doing wrong. So you're giving them a leadership position. They would much rather a student like this would much rather do something like that rather than sitting and explaining it to them. So this was wrong. Why was this wrong? Because maybe they're not empathetic because they don't know how to connect with them. They don't know how to have good communication skills or lacking or something like that. So the starting point would be them correcting it. So they're reviewing and they're looking at samples and they're finding out what's wrong, which is more difficult than actually generating an answer, right? Looking for the things that are wrong, giving feedback and things like that. So give them a leadership role, and then eventually when their communication builds, when they actually connect with the other students, you would see them slowly falling into the role of actually helping you out.
Yeah.
So you need to be a bit strategic about how you're dealing with the students.
Yeah, that makes sense. So make it seem appealing at first,
Yeah.
and then you let them do the less appealing stuff, right? Well, once they get a feel for it, once they get a taste, once they start taking to it, yeah, that makes
Because no one
sense.
wants to do extra work for nothing.
Yeah.
If I ask you to do something that I'm not paying you for, you wouldn't want to do it. For a student, if I'm asking them to do something that I'm not grading or that they're not getting grades on, they wouldn't want to do it either. Sometimes I like to look at my students as miniature adult versions rather than so like we have things like token economy. So building a token economy is giving them reward and changing their behavior according to that. So for example, have you read Harry Potter or watched it?
I've watched the series,
Yeah.
but I don't like
So,
it.
for example, you know how they're competing and the points get added on top of it. That's what token economy looks like. So, throughout the month, the term, the semester, however you want to place it, everyone gets a token for a good thing that they did, and later the people that have won get some reward or some kind of things like that. So, with my more senior classes, what we would do is you get a trip because they would want to go out of school for something like that. You cannot ask a 12th grade to, I'll give you a free class or I'll take you out to play. They would not care. So with them, even for my 12th graders, all the ideas we had were super cool and they were all a hit. For example, having a pajama day. So you do these good behaviors repetitively for the semester. You get a pajama day. You get a senior camp at school, senior movie night at school, and the word senior is something that they love
Yeah.
because they are so excited to be seniors, right? Or the UA has a lot to do. So we'll take you out for bowling. We'll take you to a theme park. So that's how you give them something to work toward. If you're just gonna yell at them, no one's gonna listen. And that's the approach that we try to give to the teachers. But obviously, it's sometimes teaching it takes a lot from a person. So it's easy to get frustrated. And I feel like teachers have the least paid job as well. So I do understand it's very difficult. In context, it looks great. Let's introduce token economy. Let's introduce feedback from students. Let's do this. But it's extra things that the teacher has to do apart from the lesson that she's teaching. So what we try to do is introduce one thing at a time. So token economy, for example, if you as a manager want to introduce it in your class, what I would suggest, what we as SLT senior leadership do is we try to get other admin staff involved in actually finalizing what it would look like and just giving everything ready to the teachers. That way, you're actually giving them something to ask something back. I'm a big believer in give and take. You can't just give orders to your teachers and expect them to like teach a lesson, make papers, make worksheets, correct papers, give feedback, actually teach in the class, connected to real world situations, connected to other lessons. It's too much to do anyways. So I feel like if they have, for example, a resource box where they can use for token economy or like a chart in their classroom or one notice board dedicated to it, they would be much more likely to do it.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's kind of the things that we do face issues with.
What you're talking about here is in sharp contrast with what we do here in teaching IELTS or SAT standardized tests, where we have limited resources, time, and space, classroom, and sometimes equipment. So it's more of the when we're teaching, and I'm not really proud of it, but I have to admit, it's more of a my way or the highway kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, which does have create a little bit of toxicity in the classroom, but we have deadlines we're being pushed against. Plus, the kids' parents are demanding, and kids' ambitions are high, and there is so much stuff to cover, and we don't really get much time for these games, honestly.
Yeah.
But we do know the importance of having a reward system in place. So what we've done here is, which is not a lot, is have movie nights for good grades, for good results on the weekends. So that's something kids are excited about. And one of the other things we've done is this podcast, literally. And we tell our students for good results on the tests, they get to come on the podcast and share their stories and, get some attention on social media, which is something they love.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can imagine.
Right.
Yeah.
They're excited. And we actually have had some of our students on the podcast before who got 8.5 on dials at the age of 16,
Oh, that's
15,
amazing.
which is, well, yeah, impressive. It's quite impressive. Yeah, I'm as much of a believer in having a good reward system, but there are times when you have to do it really the raw way. I don't know if it's the right word for it, where you have to be a little bit forceful and authoritative because there's this human nature where we, unless there is like a serious consequence or some tension, our mind doesn't really turn on the fight or flight response that we need to get fast, quick, and results. So, right. No, what I do sometimes is I see students' results and they're not, they've been stuck on, say, 20 out of 40, and we've tried many different approaches. None of these seem to work, and I say, okay, it's enough. So you have 2 weeks. You need to get 25 in 2 weeks, a 5 point jump. So that kind of turns on the fight or flight response, so they start panicking, which I think is necessary sometimes.
With
So because
your classes, you're working toward a deadline, and sometimes I assume students might come in for 2 months expecting a good result, or the, it is fast paced because it's not a traditional 1 year of study. You give a final exam, and if you have semester exams and things like that, you're working for an additional test, right?
Yeah.
Or a standardized test. So it's completely different because then you're working. Then what the teachers need to do is, for example, have work to your advantage. So if you have something that is very fast paced, working towards, like, for example, let's talk about IELTS, divide it into, it's how the teachers actually get result. So, but that only works with experienced teachers, obviously. When you have a newer staff, it wouldn't work that way. So maybe having, switching teachers, or having or what we do is, if I know that I have a teacher that is new, that came from a different country, so she doesn't understand inclusive education as well. So what I would do is have a really good teacher model a classroom for her. So, for example, I have teacher A. She is excellent with how she manages her time and how she caters to students. And this new teacher that I have doesn't understand how to work in the cultural aspect of it, or manage those students, or actually give differentiated instructions. So I would have a conversation with that teacher but then you need to give them reward as well, make them a lead teacher, increase their pay by some percentage, or give them a lower lesson load, whatever you are actually resourced to do, and then move that good teacher to model in the classroom for the teacher where the gaps exist. For that, you as a leader need to actually go into the classrooms and maybe have a observation checklist or something like that. You need to know what's actually going in the classroom, where the difficulties are, or assign a lead teacher who does that for you. But then that lead teacher should have a lower lesson load, because then he or she would be able to do the admin role with you.
Yeah, what we've done here for our new recruits, actually something similar, is we have them do what's called observation class, where they come in and sit in the class and they take notes on like your class highlights or things you would have done differently, or things you like the most about this teacher, or what are some of the parts that you wish the teacher did your way. So, and then they send this feedback to me, and then we go back and forth. So there's kind of this feedback loop where they get to see someone more seasoned teach a class and learn from them, and then they report it to me, and then I ask them about their favorites. So this whole idea is what we do here. The recruitment process is similar to what you are describing, and it does work. It really helps. It really does.
But I do understand your point. Some students are stuck, and you need to. Some staff needs to be micromanaged, so you need to tell them what to do instead of getting them to do it. For example, telling them to improve by 5 marks. The example that you gave. If a student is stuck at 20 out of 40, and they're not doing anything about those students, would be you giving them direct instructions of what you think would work. So you would know that they're lacking in, for example, the speaking aspect. So you would give them strategies that they need to do and submit it to you. So for us, the documented learning plans, we have targets. They have how you would the success criteria, the evidence that you would collect for it, and things like that. And it's not just me writing those for the teachers. It is me as the head of inclusion, the inclusion teacher that is in charge of the student outside of the classroom, the classroom teachers, the parents, and the students themselves. Everyone is involved in making that documented learning plan. So all of us have collectively said that the target, for example, is for them to improve communication, a simple target. And then they would be calling them to the classroom, giving them a weekly reading task, asking them to write a review, having them discuss a review. That's what the teachers have created for it. So I would want to get the proof, because we do have inspections in UAE. And these things are just not monitored by us, but someone externally comes and monitors what we have done. So in that kind of situation, we need to have an evidence, base and that evidence is used to create the next documented learning plan. So what I would ask the teacher is give them a direct task. I've seen that the communication skill is still not improving because they mark it on a one, like, for example, you get the marks, right? But for us, the teacher needs to mark whether the target is achieved or not. So every month, every week, however you're setting it up. So I see that a student is stuck at not achieving for like 3-4 weeks. Then I would ask the teacher what is going on, what we could do differently. With some teachers, you need to micromanage them. So I would tell her, give him this reading task, student A, for example, get him to write a review and send him to me. Then send him to the inclusion teacher. He would discuss it first with the inclusion teacher, remove the barrier of his communication, then maybe discuss it with a smaller group and move them to the whole classroom. And then we would repeat this process. So you need to give them directive. And I think that works better than, because it does create a toxic environment when you're giving my way or the highway kind of thing. So I think bring it back to the teachers is very important. Have them feel like they chose this option. So give them two options. Either have them do this, come to me, or you do this, or let them get involved in the school assembly or something like that. I'm just talking in the communication aspect. The school assembly, have them deliver it to another class, to one group of friends, make them do group activities where everyone is doing so he doesn't feel left out or something. So give them options to choose from. When they choose an option, you own the option that you choose. So it's a psychological thing.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. And the thing I mentioned was really when we've exhausted all our strategies.
Yeah,
Like we've
okay.
tried really everything. Like we do try doing the smart way first, like give the teacher and the student the benefit of the doubt and assume that they might lack competence or knowledge or experience to have the right strategy or idea in mind to be able to lead, make some headway. But then once we've tried everything and we see they just don't have the incentive to do it, the strong incentive, and that usually comes from fear, whether or not you like it.
Yeah.
Whether or not you like it. So, and that's the part where we start setting, rules. We act a little authoritative. We tell them, well, you have this deadline, or you have to get this grade until this time, or you might get expelled. And
Yeah,
it actually works. In most cases, it
I do
works,
understand.
right? Because
For
it really pulls them out of
the comfort
the
zone.
comfort zone. Yeah, really. If left to their own devices, students don't want to get much work done, honestly. I
That's
don't
true.
think the problem here is the lack of knowledge or the strategies or the resources. It's just, it seems to me that we actually all know what we're supposed to be doing. We just don't do it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
understand. So even with teaching, there's one of the schools that I've worked in is a really old school. So I'm not gonna name any one of those, but this school particularly is super old. So you have teachers that have worked here from so many years. Like I'm talking 30 years, same subject, same school, same group of students, kind of thing. So imagine you teaching algebra to a grade 8 for 30 years. You have this comfort zone, obviously, that you would fall into. You know the lesson at the back of your hand, you know what you need to teach, and you've been doing it for so long, it's hard to change. And with UA in general, there are, how do I explain it? There is an inspection that happens by the Ministry of Education of the city for every school. And there's a generic framework that all UAE follows. And then depending on the city, it is different, kind of different for all of them as well. So with Dubai, it is very like set in place. So you need to show evidence and get inspected on and all of those things for your, for example, there are five performance standards. So to give you a general feedback, there is attainment of what the students are attaining. There is wellness of the school. There's well-being. There's a lot of different things that go into it. So it's a very holistic thing. They might come into your school just to look at the teacher well-being, and you need to give proof of if there is well-being for your staff or not, if there is well-being of your students or not, and things like that. So when you have that framework to work against, I think you do things differently. For example, for in UA, if you want to terminate a teacher, it's not something that's not done, but there's a lot of things that you need to put in place to do it. So we do have a really hard time getting those kind of difficult teachers back on track. Like you said, for you guys, it's easy. It's a private setup, and it's the last option they know is termination, right? But with us, we have to be very like there's a whole process that goes into it. So there is, for example, you have conversations with the teacher. Then you do the model classrooms, then you give them additional resources, you assign them trainings or workshops. All of this doesn't work. You have a staff improvement plan for them where you, as a good teacher, would be leading that plan and I would report to you, even though you are a parallel to me or a colleague to me. And nothing works, then you submit all this evidence to your head office or something, then you terminate the teacher.
So it's in a way you're building a case against the
Yes, so it's
teacher.
very like in just the education sector in UAE as a whole is very, you have licensing for the teachers, you have a lot of things that actually go into it. So for Dubai, it's very inbuilt. So the inspections now,
So hang on a minute. You said licensing. So aside from their diploma, they need to get a license to teach, like doctors do.
yes. So for example, for teaching, you need to have your bachelor's in whatever discipline you want to teach. Then you need to have a bachelor's of education as well. And then once, for example, for me, I'm a teacher, I want to teach psychology. I need to have my bachelor's in psychology and I need to have a bachelor's in education. For example, if I just want to teach with psychology, it doesn't work because I would only be teaching the senior students. But with English, and you want to focus on early years, so your bachelor's of education in early years need to be done. And there are a few criteria. It needs to be full time. So you need to be full time enrolled in a university when you do it. It cannot be online. Then when you bring those documents, you get them equalized to the UAE university and everything. Once it's equalized, then they need to verify it. So your degree goes for verification. They send it back to the university. Is it authentic or not? Once that is done, then they know that everything is done on the checklist. Then you need to book yourself a licensing test. During this time, you get a transitional license, which can be a year to a year until your documentation and tests are done. So I go to UAE, get my transitional license, get my things in order and everything. Then I have to give the test. So there is the pedagogy test that you give. Then there is the specialization test. For example, if you're early years, you would give a specific test for that. If I'm special education, I would give a specific test to that. If you teach English as a second language, you give a specific test for that. Getting those tests done, getting your result, passing, then you get your permanent license.
That's honestly so
Complicated.
that the level of rigor you have in raising teachers is just unbelievable. Like
And
here, I think in Uzbekistan, I'm not exactly sure how this process goes, but I think all you need is a diploma and a little bit of work experience you build while you're getting your diploma, and you're good to go.
it's
It's
very, and the
it's
thing
pretty
with UAE, it's
straightforward.
very competitive as well. So, for example, while you have gotten your license, still for in an not in Dubai but in Abu Dhabi, you renew your approval kind of to work yearly. So, for example, you need CPD hours, so continuous professional development hours. So, for example, for my case, I need to do, I think, I don't remember it. It was either 70, 90, or 120 hours that I need to do during that year. Then I would be qualified for a renewal. So, despite me having all my degree and everything and said, I still need to do it. But they are a bit flexible. For example, if I'm doing a second master's or something like that, they would consider that into the CPD hours. But it needs to have some relationship to the kind of work I'm doing. So some connection to education maybe or something like that, or psychology for me, or special education. If it's an English teacher, she could do linguistic or something along those lines, then that can be transferred to your CPD hours as well. And it's super competitive. People don't, it's really difficult to get a job in a teaching line because there are just too many teachers.
Right, right. I but you see, actually, there's a lot of benefits to having a sophisticated system like that in place, right?
Yeah.
Because as a teacher, I know unless there is some kind of a certification or inspection authority supervising and making sure teachers are up to much in terms of their skills and qualities, we just get complacent, honestly. Like he's teaching the same stuff over. Like once you get to the point where you know everything like the back of your hands, you're not really gonna put in the hours worth of work to work on your skills or to bring some value to the classroom. And this is one of the reasons why by the time we drop this podcast, we will be implementing we will have implemented a score update policy at the school where we're having our teachers take the IELTS test every 6 to 10 months, depending on their previous band score. So, like if we have a teacher who got 7.5, they have to do it every 4 months. If we got a teacher who got 8, they have to do it every 10 months. If we got a teacher who got 8.5, they have to do it every year. And they have to do it until they get 2 nines, after which it's optional. So that's kind of the strategy we have in mind. We haven't quite made it official because me and my partner Alicia have been going back and forth thinking about the logistics because the school has to pay for their exam fee, so that's going to be a lot of money because it's a pretty big school now. But we realized to maintain the integrity and the quality here, we have to have some sort of
Yeah. No, I
system.
understand.
Right, because with learning centers like us, there is no really inspection authority, right?
Yeah.
It's I think public schools are more credible than private schools with respect to the quality of education because they are being overseen by government agencies. But with learning centers like this one, we don't really have inspectors coming in and checking the quality of our classes and teachers' qualifications. Not really, and it's about time that we introduce the sort of policy here as well, right? Yeah.
I mean, it's a work in progress. For example, when I was working in Dubai, all these things, what the governing body is called KHDA, so the education governing body. With them, everything is in order. So, for example, for my discipline, they would come in, pick out a couple students from each tier or whatever, and they would do in-depth case study kind of thing for that particular student. So if I have 40 on the list, they would pick any two. And for them, they would see everything for them, their medical records, their classroom, samples, every single thing, meet the parents if they have a psychologist or if they have a therapist, like a physiotherapist, an OT, a speech therapist coming in, have a conversation with them, have a conversation with all teachers. And it's a very in-depth kind of a thing. But I've recently moved to Abu Dhabi to work. And Abu Dhabi still doesn't have that embedded things. They don't have compliance. That's the right word. So this year, when the director of EDIC, the Abu Dhabi's education department, I think he changed the year, not this academic year, the year before that, or the year before that. And he made like around, I don't know the exact number, but around 50 policies. Everything is covered in that policy. You have any doubt, open a policy, it's there. So with that, now the schools have a deadline to compliance. With UA, everyone's already done the compliant bit. All of those are done like a couple of years in the past. I don't know how many exactly. With Abu Dhabi, they're still new on this. So you need to refer all your school policies, you need to align them with edX policy. You can have your own input into it, obviously, but the thing that you need to be compliant with, you need to be compliant with. So there's a lot of focus on inclusion this year. One of the reasons I did move was a lot of reasons. Among those was that I really loved the aspect of, I'm competitive, super competitive. So every city that I've worked in 3 cities till now and have gone through an inspection. And in the inspection report, they would mention me by name that because of her or something. And it's such an achievement because you don't really get achievement as teaching unless there's some kind of appreciation or, you win something like a good rating in the inspection. So it's been a thing for me. Once I heard about the Abu Dhabi's, changing up the policies and everything, I was like, I really want to move. But that there was a lot of logistics going into it as well. But I did move, and we still did not have our inspection in the school yet. There's a lot to do. Until the inspection happens, there's a whole week of inspection, basically. So until that week, everything builds up to it. And once they leave with a lot of feedback, areas of growth. Then it's working towards the next inspection. So the good thing about Abu Dhabi is there's an inspection every 2 years. And Dubai has moved to the same thing. So this is the first year they implemented this because you cannot show impact in one academic year. So, for example, with my students, we do a data triangulation. There's different, I believe in a data-driven kind of environment. So they take the standardized tests like MAP scores. Then they have the CAT4. These are 2 standardized tests that they do. Then there is their internal assessments that they're doing. So what I like to do is triangulate that data. Because sometimes, for example, the rigor of the internal assessment can be quite low. So they're not making a test that's actually testing the student. So with data triangulation, you get a very holistic view of the student. For example, MAP targets 4 areas: your reading, your writing, your math, and your science. And with CAT4, it's verbal intelligence, nonverbal intelligence, spatial intelligence, and one more that I'm forgetting. So it's very holistic tests as a whole. Once you have the data triangulation, you can map their growth. So for us, every documented learning plan, we do one every semester. Every place I've worked at, that's how I like to do it. So once what the initial baseline when they actually come into the school, then after a semester, around December, they take their first test. And then we join back in December after the winter Christmas break. We combine the baseline with the one that they did during the December, or this December to the last year's December's results. And then we change our documented learning plan and we move to the around, when is it? I'd say April. That's when our semester ends, right? March, April. This is the shortest semester. So you do not get a lot of the things that the goals that you've set during this time, 50% of that might be repeated for semester 3 and then again in June or July. So we need to not only give the school but the parents, we need to tell them that this is the progress, and data is very important when you're, giving targets, marking progress, knowing where they need to improve or not. So it's very, and I think the government really does help us with these resources. For example, I wouldn't be able to do it if they did not make a compliance for the school to have an external exams as well. So because they need to do it, I get that data. So the government of UAE has, you know, it's a beautiful thing to work in education because how easy they've made things for us. You have a gifted student, you want to enrich them, they'll give you free resources for it. For example, one of the schools I worked in, there was a student who was visually impaired. She was a kindergartner who couldn't see. So with her, we none of us knew Braille. So the reading thing, right? None of us had any idea how to cater a kid that is blind who's in KG to how would we do it? For a student that's older, okay, we'd do audio things, but how would you teach A or colors or things like that to a person that cannot see? So it was a challenge that I took up. I did leave the school and I feel really bad when I left that. I wanted to see how she would progress. And it's that the reason I'm telling you is it's this easy. I called up the agencies and the Ministry of Education. I was like, this is the case I'm getting. I really want to enroll her in the school. Can you tell me what kind of resources you could provide us? Obviously, there's a huge, there is kind of a lot of back and forth that goes on. Then they provide you, but trainings is something that they would provide like this. You have a student, for example, I have a case that is autism, never dealt with it. They will give me free access to every possible training I want. And free access to resources they're more tangible, more expensive. So that's a thing that you need to really work toward. But every school has a budget for them. The government themselves has a budget for them. So there's an ample amount of resources. So from that, but it's also very sad when you have all of that and you see the student not progressing. I think that's worse than not having the resources and having that issue.
Yep. Probably it's only a matter of time before the student's skills come along, right? Sometimes you just need to be patient. You might not see progress instantly. It might take sometimes months, years, right?
True.
And other times, I tell myself, even if there's no progress, at least the kid is busy, right? It's better than not having anything to do.
Yes.
So it's at least there's an environment where they can socialize, hang out and just interact with people. And that's one of my comments whenever teachers come back to me and say, I've tried everything, I've tried this and that, all the things you've said, but still no progress. I tell them, just let the kid still stick around. Just let him stick around. He might have a turning point someday or he may not, but I know he's going to be worse off if he leaves the school because he's going to get involved in some bad things, right? So.
And with IELTS, the kind of thing is there's a lot of luck involved. Sometimes you're lucky with the paper, and sometimes you're not lucky with it, right? So I feel like everyone needs to, if you have such a student, just give them anything that you can give them, and maybe they're lucky and they would score much better than the high achievers. Because sometimes the test actually for the teachers in UAE, they need to take academic IELTS as well as part of their, licensing and everything.
Really?
Yeah, they do.
All teachers.
All teachers.
Wow.
But no, sorry, it's not part of the licensing, but some schools do mandate it. Yeah, I take it back. Because my friends.
Regardless of the subject they teach.
Yeah. Because they're
Wow.
all teaching in English, right?
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
That's why.
Is the official language of teaching in Emirates, United Arab Emirates, English?
Unless it's a government school, then it's in Arabic, or else it's in English.
Right. And this whole time we've been talking about private schools, right?
Yeah, we're talking about private schools.
And what's the situation like with public schools? Because I've this entire time I've been comparing the things you're saying with the public schools in Uzbekistan, and I see huge contrast.
Public schools the thing is, with public schools, it's the same kind of thing, but I think the rigor is much less. But I can't say for sure because I've not worked with them, right? But it's they do have inspections as well. A government school goes through the same inspection that we go through, but I guess their tests are different because the kind of tests that we take, maybe they don't take those. Maybe a few cultural differences here and there. They're doing everything in Arabic, so maybe that they're, for example, if you're doing it in Arabic, it's internal assessment, right? They're not actually sitting for the GCSEs, or they're not taking their AP exams and things like that. So there might be some differences here and there, but the inspection is the same. The level of the expectations are the same. With Abu Dhabi, they have done this thing that's kind of different. Is they've taken leading. It was very interesting to me. There are these things called charter schools. There are these semi-government schools. So what these are, they're free for the local students. So like a government school would be, but expat students have to pay for them. So non-local students. So similar to how a government school would work. But what they've done is taken leading school groups. For example, GEMS is, I guess, the name clicks because there are a lot of GEMS school. Then there's Bloom, then there's Talim. Talim is education, but that's a group of schools. And then there's Bloom. I think there might be a couple more in there, and the government has partnered up with them. So it is a government school, but a private body is running it, kind of thing. But that only exists in Abu Dhabi, the charter schools.
Right.
Other cities don't have that kind of thing.
Right. Wow. That's something else impressive about your education systems, the diversity of schools and the curriculums they run on.
We have a French curriculum school, we have Australian curriculum schools, which when you're into education, I think the prominent ones are British and American. You don't really think about, or the local that you have in the country. But with us, I know for a fact that I saw a German curriculum once because one of the students, my students, had transferred from a German school. Yeah. So I know for a fact that there's a German school as well. There are too many.
I actually have a question I want to really ask you here, but before we do that, I think we should take a little break. You're okay, or
I'm fine.
you're fine?
I can talk for hours. I'm used to giving workshops
Right.
that last for hours, so I'm all right.
How do you like the room temperature here? It's not hot.
It's all right. It's okay. I like the warm because as soon as I go out, it's crisp cold.
Yeah, right. So, you seem to know quite a lot about different curriculums and education standards. So, if you had to pick from one of these curriculums to to have your kids be taught, which one would you go with? Would you choose the British, American, Australian, German, French, Martian?
The thing is, I would only have a tough choice between, depends on where I'm living in the future. One part is that, but let's say we're in the same situation ever, I would have a conflict between British and American. With British, there's not a lot that you could, scaffold for a student, so move it down. For example, if there's a special ed student, with American, it's very easy to scaffold it down, but with British, it leads up to an exam. So you're leading up to your checkpoint. You need to do your checkpoint, right? Everything needs to be ticked off. So that's the first international exam that a British curriculum student has. And I think it's in grade 6. No, I don't remember. I took it ages ago. So that's the first kind of exam that you have. And the checkpoint curriculum is there. You need to know the curriculum to give the curriculum, to take the exam. Then it's the GCSEs, which are 9, 10, 11. Those are the years you can take it, grade 9, grade 10, grade 11. Then it is, and you need to know the curriculum for it. If, for example, I'm a very low achiever, there's the option to choosing a core exam. Core means the height you get, let's say 50% of the syllabus to study, but the highest grade you get is a C. So it's ensuring that students are not failing by giving them half the task, but also not a full grade. With A levels, I don't think there is a core option for it, but A levels is super difficult as well. So then 12 and 13 you do it. I think I would look at my kids level. I would make sure that they start off in British. I don't know actually. Maybe they can start off in the American. The American is more fun. It's more hands-on activities. For example, the kindergarten, I think, is better for the American curriculum. It's very enriching. Whatever standard if they're following the California Common Core or whatever state they're following the U.S. standards, I think KG is better in the American. And up until middle school, I think the British is better because it builds a good base until the checkpoint level comes around middle school. And then after that, you can see the level of your child, I think. Because checkpoint really is very holistic. With the American curriculum, it is not leading up to a test. So, teachers can, mold here and there. It's more internal testing. So there's no external test. With external or standardized test, you know for sure, and you're, you know, checking your child progress in a standardized setting. So this is the standard, and this is what my child is getting. So up until the checkpoint, I think it's really good to have them in a British curriculum. And then you see that your child is more, let's say, some students are more inclined towards things that are not taught in the classroom, honestly. I was one of those students. I loved being out of the class rather than inside the class. So then I would have my kids switch to American because American is the curriculum, how it's set, it gives leeway for you to be out of the class and, study those things kind of thing.
Yeah, how do you mean that?
So, for example, in the America, with the British curriculum, your test is, you write the tests. For your GCSEs, after the checkpoint, you would have to read it, learn it, test it out, and that's it. With the American, you have the freedom to have a project-based test as well. So let's say that I'm taking up geography. And if the teacher wants, she can test me on my practical knowledge by giving me a project to do, maybe check for geographical locations or have like an anthropology thing thrown into it. So there's a lot of flexibility with the American curriculum, which you don't get with the British one. I mean, any project that you give them would be something external. They might not be graded on that eventually, right? With the American, for example, I really like the schools. The first semester, it is a standard paper-based test. The second semester should be a project because, see, you're coming back after the Christmas break in January, February, March, April. And during these 4 months, you also have you have a midterm break. That's for about a week. You're leading up to a spring break, and let's just say there's around 3.5 months. In these months, because in UAE this is the good weather, so there's a lot of field trips and sports days and things like that that happen in the second semester as well. So it's a very short instruction time. Maybe the teachers are only teaching for 2 months. So I love the schools where the second semester is just a project-based test. So you're not, it's really difficult if you expect students to learn with the fun things and just have one kind of test. And project-based tests also means that there are students that are maybe someone's dyslexic and they would do much better or some students generally do well with hands-on. So they would be better with those kind of tests.
So there are a few other questions I want to talk about. Job you're involved in. One of the things you mentioned in your resume was you received training on teen suicide prevention. Like, well, what is it? What is it about?
So
What did that training involve? How do you go about helping teenagers with suicidal thoughts?
So for me, with inclusion, I worked previously as a counselor as well, a school counselor. And it was in line with my field in psychology, but I still wanted to know more. Like, it's a very difficult. How do you take someone a step away from, killing themselves? It's something very severe as well. So the training was very informative. First, it was the thing that no one thinks about is early intervention. So spreading out the awareness, having peer check-ins, it was mostly focusing on what you could do to prevent the teen suicide rates and how to identify it, how to place people in order. Like for example, every floor having a supervisor, or having those anonymous tip boxes, or things like that. It was more about strategies than actually what to do in that instant situation. But for us, we do have like laws and regulations around it. So if best case scenario, there's an early intervention, you find it out, you refer them to the counselor, and if someone is under 18 and they are thinking of harming themselves or someone else, you do not need to maintain confidentiality. You can loop in the parents, you can loop in authorities like a proper rehab center, a psychologist, or an out service facility for them. So it was more on the graphics around it, but not actually on what to do in that kind of situation. So for us, we do get a lot of guidelines from my degree of psychology, from this course on what to do to prevent it, because that's not something we studied, and from the government to do what to do in the instant of that's happening. So we unfortunately there was one case that we did have. It was a very instant thing. I wasn't a counselor in that school. I was in the inclusion. I was overseeing like well-being and counseling as well, though. So what that student did was she had a sharp object and she was trying to kill herself by slitting her wrists or something like that. So the good thing was we did have in place a floor manager, floor supervisors. So the only space in that school that didn't have a CCTV footage was inside the bathroom, and that's where she went. So the hallways where the cubicles are, so she was in that hallway doing that. So one of the cleaners, we give them training in various languages because the cleaning ladies or the support staff that we have speak different languages than English. They have a bare minimum English knowledge, but they're from India or Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or Pakistan or something like that, or Nepal. So we did try to cater to a very different language aspects. We told them if this happens, you need to go to your floor manager, you need to go to the counselor and things like that. So she informed the floor manager, who instantly went there and got a teacher to call this. We had a female counselor, so call the counselor as well. So she had to physically stop the girl, and we called the counselor, who then called the parents, and the authorities got involved and things like that. So at that time, it's just it's your flight and flight response, and you just have to stop that situation then and there. But it's actually the prevention that you need to really focus on. So if we didn't have these things in place, it would have been a much different scenario. So it's having the floor managers, having peer check-ins. For example, just one of the things we did was there was a wellness meter. So you had to scan the code, like Wellness Wednesdays is what we named them. You had to scan the QR code and put in anonymously, have rate your mood. And there was a question that did, foreshadow, or not direct question, but something that led up to a risk assessment of suicide intervention or suicide prevention, things like that. So now that tip is that generating poll that we had was anonymous because we actually wanted to know what the students felt like. But every grade had a different QR code, right? So we could at least, try to contain the issue in a grade. So let's say that I've seen a lot of low wellness rating and risk assessment towards suicide kind of things in grade 8B. So I know for a fact that this has a case or two in it. So what we would do is not to, raise suspicion or something like that, give all of grade 8 an awareness training into, you know, giving them, for example, a group therapy session or having an awareness session for them by the counselor so that they are more, they get involved with the counselor and they can go to the counselor for help and just, having a peer check-in thing with them. So, including, for example, everyone from 8B had to go to 8A to have a peer check in. How are you feeling? How are you feeling? Kind of a thing. However, the counselor wanted to play it out. So, this training was really helpful in what to do and how to prevent it.
Like, have you ever had any counseling session with a student yourself?
Yes, but my counseling sessions are more with the behavior issues kids. And when I was working as a counselor as well, I did not, because my specialty was more in behavior intervention and intervention plans. And we had another counselor then who would be dealing with the, because she was a clinical psychologist, right? So she would be dealing with the cases of depression and suicide. I would get a couple of anxiety cases and things like that. So what I had in my office then was a paper tantrum. So instead of students throwing a tantrum in the class, I would bring them out and they would have a paper tantrum. So it was like you could write, scribble, put your feelings out there and things like that. And then we would have, like, for example, a calm zone and things like that. And then I feel like with a lot of the older kids, just talking about it makes, and you get to know a lot. A lot of them have problems at home, falling out with their best friends, and it is the end of the world for them. You have a best friend and now you don't have them anymore. It's the end of the world for them. So I got cases like this. I did not take any severe ones because it was outside of my scope, right? So I would rather have them given to the clinical psychologist that we have at school.
So how do you go about those conversations? Like, I really want to know the specific questions, like, or the conversation starters you have when talking to those students, because I sometimes have those conversations myself. I really want to see how your experience compares to mine.
So for the thing that I always tell, like, even the teachers and when I'm giving training, is have active listening. Try to prompt them into talking. And with active listening, you're not just listening, you're taking feedback from them, giving them reassurance and things like that. So how would the normal conversation starter would be, oh, so how are you feeling today? I know it's the most cliche line ever with some students that are, reoccurrent cases, let's say. So I wouldn't start with, how was your day? I would rather start with something that we discussed the last time. So, for example, the student is having a fallout with friends or facing bullying, let's say. So I would be like, oh, let's say has Ali bothered you in the past? Did you develop a good relationship with them? Did or something? If the mood's already dampened, I'd start with something that's a bit more brightening. So, for example, are you looking forward to the event that we're having today? Do you want to help me prepare for this event, or something that is just going to lighten the mood and give them, have a conversation opener? So something open ended to start with, so that they can, if they want to rant, they get to rant. If you feel that they're closed off, you can engage them in an activity to rant. And then there are a lot of psychological tools that I've learned to use. For example, there are inventories and tests that you can take. For example, there's this thing called draw a person test, something like that. So in the initial sessions that I would have, we would do more of getting to know each other, icebreakers, kind of these tests, and they need to have a mental checklist and things like that. I really like to have fun things in my office. So, for example, I would have a deck of riddles. I would have a deck of, like, everything that's there is visible to the students. So my students do know that they need to come in and pick the activity that they need to do, and we just have that for a while, have help them relax, because they usually come to me when they're in a bad situation. I didn't have the regular sessions are done differently, but the ones that are coming from a bad situation, we like to, like, get them from here to here, or from here to here as well. Like, find the mid ground. So sometimes they just want to take the paper tantrum, write things down, or sometimes they want to. There is a beanbag in my office, not in the current school, in the previous one. So in the beanbag, they would just tell me that I want to read for a while, and I had a self help section. So if they just want to escape the classroom, but they knew that that corner is a 10-minute corner. So they can't access it for more than 10 minutes. And I had a sand timer. So you go on the beanbag, you start the timer, you have 10 minutes to do whatever you want, and no devices. And then you move back to the conversation. Sometimes it's just letting them have the free space, or knowing when they want to rant, listening to them, and letting them choose what they want to do instead of dictating it to them. Or when they are very closed off and they're just super agitated and everything, then we would use things like the paper tantrum, or we would do something with their hands, because when you're anxious or angry, the energy builds up and you're enclosed like that. So when you're doing something hands on, that kind of takes the edge off. So that's why we have these cards. I try not to use like cards like Uno and things like that, because then it will go a complete different way. There are self-help cards that we do, then there are riddle cards that we do, then there's the charades cards that I have. So it's mini games that we can play. Usually when they come angry, they don't want to do the charades and everything. So there's this one deck that we made ourselves. It's like you can choose, if you're having a really, really bad day, you can choose one of those free passes. So in the free passes, maybe I would have them go home early. That's the best one. The best one for, so 2:30 is when they leave school. So if they get that card out, they can either use it for the future, or they can use it that day to get home at 1:30. So just an hour earlier, but that's the best card. So that is something that despite how angry you are, you would want to use that deck, right? So that's how it helps them calm down. So just mini strategies, it's knowing your students. I know my students want to leave early. I know my students want to order a pizza someday instead of use the school canteen. Or I know my students want to bring in their device or something like that on a day that devices are not allowed, because they're going out with their friends later or something like that. So just putting those things in, which that, like, I don't know the context here, right? I wouldn't know what things your students would actually want from you. For me, I know telling them that you get to order a pizza because it's not allowed to order food from outside, or have a day off early, or, for example, if you have every student they get a chance to, put their sample on the board or some activity like this, and I would be like, we would switch it out. So if you have to submit something, I would help you for it. Or, for example, if the student really wanted to participate, it's a senior event, that they're the senior walk or something like that, or if only the student council is involved in the planning and management or something, they get a free pass to do it. And with that, you're also helping them have communications with others. You're helping them create a peer group as well, because everyone on the student council is all obviously older, mature, leadership position kind of kids. And then there's this vulnerable kid that really wants to participate in this one thing. But if you open that channel for everyone, everyone would be there instead of their classrooms. So having these kind of activities to, loop them in one by one. So now this student who's getting bullied, who's facing a lot of trouble in the classroom, doesn't have any friends, for him to go to a group of like the older brother group, that's what I call them, and having him involved with that group, taking on a serious role. So everyone in the class would be like, oh, he's having more fun than us, opens possibility for friendship and things like that. So you kind of need to play around with what you have. When I saw that the riddle, charades, and those kind of things were not working with these really agitated, angry kids that were coming to me, I started to try to give them something, so they know if they behave, they're going to get to choose one of the things that is, good for them, or fun, actually. So I think it's more about opening up. It's
Yeah.
really hard than when someone's not opening up.
I see. And well, what I do here is whenever I have a situation where a student is beat up, anxious, or there's some problem with one of their friends or their teachers, you offer them what we call a therapy session, where we sit down in a quiet room and talk. and can't agree more with the part where you said you should be more of a listener than a talker when that happens. And I turn on my listener mode and I say, okay, go ahead, tell me everything happened. I'll listen to the whole story, and then what I do is I hand them a paper and a pen, and sometimes they just have them do it verbally, but I guess paper works better because in moments where when they are anxious, their thoughts are all over the place, so they have trouble really, putting it out in a coherent, meaningful way. So I hand them a paper and tell them to write every single thought, rushing through their mind. So and then sort those thoughts into I can control and I can control. So and then once we do that, I try to explain to them or think of ways we can steer away from thoughts that we can't control or facts about the situation that we can't control. There's a say their mock results, their test results not getting better, and it might have to do with their family circumstances, it might have to do with their attendance, it might have to do with their with the peer pressure, it might have to do with so all these different factors, and some of these factors aren't really within their control, like uh, like the family circumstances where they may not have opportunities to to do homework, and this is the part where we try to offer them to come and study here or allocate the room for those students where they can do their homework if it's not possible to do it at home, or that there are things like peer pressure, or like what their friends think of them because of their low results, and I try to convince them that the people's opinion, they're temporary and they should try not to dwell on them. But it's really hard for someone young to get over it because they attach so much importance to being respected and appreciated by people around them. So, yeah.
And like I said, for them, that's the end of the world because that's their world, right?
Right.
So for them, that is their end of the world. So it's difficult.
It really is. So, one of the other things you mentioned on your CV was crisis intervention. Is it similar to behavioral intervention? Because this
Yeah.
sounds a little more alarming.
No, crisis intervention is alarming. So you do have with the I don't know how to put it in mellow words is what I'm thinking. There are a lot of parents that are bothersome. With the parents that are bothersome, we do have a lot of cases where they phone up the police. Or kind of things like that. For example, not every parent whose son might have had a fallout with with another boy, or or just like an argument with a other classmate would take it easy. Some of them would literally phone up the police, and then there's a lot of things that go into it. So that is one aspect of the crisis intervention. Then when you're in special education, there's a lot of identification that goes on. Not everyone comes in with their diagnosis, right? You go into the class, you look at the person, you identify yourself, and then there's a very difficult conversation with the parents where you tell them that you think there is something wrong and they need to go follow up with a psychoeducational therapist or something like that, or get a medical test done for those students. So that can usually turn out into a crisis as well. Alhamdulillah, I've never had that yet. To this state, I've never had that. I've never had a difficult parent. There was one that was a bit difficult, but that's about it. But he had a history of being difficult, that parent. He was the one that did phone up the police a couple of times before I joined the school. So that kind of crisis does exist. Sometimes there is an altercation between the teacher and a student, and if it's an older student, they could phone up the police as well. And because UAE has a lot of good rules to protect these children, there are laws that, for example, if there's a law that passes out, every student has to get a workshop on it by the government, by the school, by an external source. There was this law, a child protection law called Wadima law. So Wadima was this kid who was abused and murdered by her family. It was a local, an Emirati girl. She was very young. And after her death, they revised everything about child protection. And this isn't, I'm not talking about a long policy, a year or something. It was instantaneously. They changed up the law that if you see a child being abused and if you don't report it, you could go to jail.
It's that
It's
serious.
that serious. So they don't, because it's a serious matter, there are a lot of people that are going to misuse it. So with that, we do get phony, do get like fake, I would say, police phone calls. But the police is very understanding because there's a cultural awareness built around it, right? So if you get the Ministry of Education involved as well, some of the parents complain directly to the Ministry of Education if they think their child's not getting the grade that they deserve. So these things do cause up a crisis rather than a behavior intervention or something like that. So yeah, and you need a person that can talk to parents to calm them down. So with that, you usually have a lead. Every school has a parent relation coordinator. So they're usually the ones that are excelling in the crisis management that leads to parents. But otherwise, it's if it's in a classroom crisis, someone's fighting, someone's bleeding, someone got hit or something. So those are usually the counselor or me. When I used to be the counselor, it was me. But when I switched to the inclusion role, I'm still in my current school the staff well-being lead and the mental health lead, as well as my role in inclusion. So with that kind of things, I do have a lot of coordination with the counselors, with things like that. So if a crisis happens, I'm usually aware or in the loop or kind of helping out with to avert it.
So, what do you do in a situation where you have a parent or parents burst into your office and they're so agitated and they're yelling, like the Karen kind of thing? And
Ew.
how do you get them off their high horses?
I mean,
Do you call the police on them or?
no, we don't. I feel like maybe people do, but I don't. It's just listening to them. Usually they have a point. No parent comes in barging to your, like, throwing a tantrum or things like that if they don't have a valid point. Maybe they are really overprotective parents. They only have one kid who has a serious health issue or had a health issue in the past and they're really overprotective. For them to burst in your office, on their part, you need to be very understanding because for them it's their kid that they have left in your hands and they're paying to leave in your hands, obviously for you to teach and everything, but you are the sole responsible when they're on the premises. So it is your fault if something happens to the student. When you go in with that mindset, it humbles you down, and when you are calm and understanding, automatically the parent will calm down. The only issues where it went to extremes is if it had happened in the past repetitively and the parent's just done with it, or the parent had a bad experience, or if the management and the school as a whole had a very different view with the parent and they did not know how to communicate it well. If you if you're calm and you actually listen to them, all the parents do drop back. Any time that a parent has come in yelling, always feels very apologetic when they leave. Because because you need to be calm and actually understand their point of view. And sometimes they're unaware of the thing that actually went down. When you let them know, or even if it's your own mistake and you own up to it humbly, they do feel apologetic of the way that they barged in or yelled at you or threw things around or things like that. So I've never had a parent that left angry, alhamdulillah, except that one parent.
How do you keep your cool in these moments? Like, I honestly have trouble, not letting my emotions run high, because you can't just help get little angry at the parent for not being respectful. So
I
I
mean,
try being understanding. It's just the, I guess maybe just the hormones. You get a spike of adrenaline or then
yeah.
cortisol all of a sudden, and then emotions run high. So
For
how do you stay calm in those situations?
I don't know. It comes naturally to me, I guess. For me, as soon as this happens, I sit with the parent And my thing is, let's find out together what happened. For example, let's say with you, it would be, why is my student not improving in marks? And they come in and yell at you, be very disrespectful. And you can tell them to just try to save your own staff, obviously, because they are also your responsibility as much as the student is. Calm them down and say, let's look at the samples of his work. So let's see how he's doing. Let me go to the teacher, or don't call the teacher during that time, because that's just going to make it worse. Let me go get his samples. Don't even mention the teacher, I guess. Get the sample, actually show them what's going on. Because they've blindly trusted you, leaving their kids here and paying hefty amounts of money, right? So actually show them what's going on. And I think you just need to find an outlet later. For example, when I have had a really bad day at work, what I would do is, when I was home, I would talk to my mom or talk to my brother or something, and just like dish it out for them that this happened, or have a good colleague that you can talk to. So I've been blessed in all accounts. I could go to a colleague afterwards and discuss everything with her and be like, I am so done with this parent. This is what happened. But in that moment, you need to be like, I've done something wrong. That humbles you down instantly. Be like, it was my responsibility and the child has not progressed. The child was hurt or whatever the reason is. And now the parent is not just angry. You need to think of them as upset, disappointed, or hurt, or scared. Because that's what they usually are. And it comes off as anger, right? So once you go into the meeting with that mindset, I think it humbles you instantaneously. You need to think of, I was wrong here. Let's try to make it right from my end. Sometimes you do get angry, but you just have to let it go in the moment. And afterwards, you could be like, oh my God, what a day.
Right. Right. Yeah. It really helps staying composed in moments like that, and trying to get get all sides of the story and work things out together collectively, right? It's not like it's like my team against your team, but we're all the same team. So let's work it out together. Really does the trick. Got it. Right. So we did quite a bit of talking about your professional experience. Now, on the next chapter of the podcast, I was hoping we touch on a little bit about, talk a little bit about your personal interests as well.
Yeah.
So you told me you are quite a travel buff. You like traveling.
I'm obsessed. One of the reasons I went to Pakistan for university as well was I was very like, the amount of calculations I did. The 2018 was like a case study for me to see if I could manage it and everything. For example, let's say I moved to the UK for my education, or the States or something. To study in the States, to work in the States, and to actually be able to travel was not something that would happen financially. Or if you consider the timeline, I don't think I would be able to do university, get a job, because I didn't know anyone or something like that, and have the ability to travel. Because my mindset was, if I'm going to the States, I'm going to road trip to like throughout every state. That's a goal, a bucket list thing for me. So I was like, I can't do that. Even if I, 4 years of university, 2 years more, 6, 7 years, I don't think I would be able to do that, because I'd be busy with the university. And the work I would have, even if I was financially able, I don't think I would have the time to be able to take those many days off, things like that. The UK, a lot of my family is settled in the UK. So I was like, maybe I could do it. But then the bachelor's is for 3 years, and the master's there is only for a year for psychology. And I was like, 4 years is not enough. So I was like, the thing is, Pakistan was like an untapped resource for me. And it is amazing. You get all seasons. You get every kind of, geographical location here. You would get mountains, snow, river, warm places, gardens and deserts, and everything's there. So I was like, and the thing is, when you vacation as a kid, going back in the summer vacation to your home country kind of thing, you don't really get to travel. What you get to do is meet your relatives, see a couple of a couple sightseeing things, get along with your cousins, try the food, because you only have a month. And you wouldn't be, able to just leave the whole family and just go travel. So I was like, and the pictures, like, if I show you a picture, you'd be like, this is not Pakistan. When I saw pictures like that, I was like, I need to. And I don't think I've left one place for myself to see because I wanted to see it with the border of India and Pakistan. It's really pretty area there called Kashmir. The reason why we didn't go to Kashmir was a couple of reasons. One of them was we wanted to trek all the way and stay there like a hiking, trekking kind of trip. And it didn't happen because it was taking a lot of time. We wanted someone to go with us who actually knew the location. So me and my friends were not able to do that.
Plus, isn't it dangerous?
That's why we wanted someone local.
Yeah.
Or the other option was going with a person that was, either in the Air Force or Army, so that we wouldn't be it wouldn't be dangerous, and we would get access to places that civilians wouldn't get access to. Because if you have a buddy that's in the Army, you get to go in the areas where non-civilians could go, right? Authorized personnel only.
Yeah.
So in the years that I was there, I couldn't get that thing done. So I think that's the only place I didn't visit.
Right. And of all the places you've traveled around the world, which one has been your favorite so far? Which one is one country you'd love to visit again?
I visit again. I mean, everywhere. Like I feel like I've left things everywhere. The one country that I could never get tired of is Saudi Arabia.
Come again?
Because Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Because one, because of the Islamic values, and you get to do the pilgrimage and all of those things. It's so huge. That's one of the countries, but there are a lot on my checklist. The checklist of where I need to go is much longer than the checklist of where I need to go again. So I think I need to check off a few from here, then we can move back to like where I want to go again. So the next trip that I've planned after Uzbekistan is going to Maldives with my mom. So today is actually her birthday.
Wow.
Uh,
Happy birthday, Mom.
So happy birthday, mom. So basically, the reason I wanted to do it as a Galentine's weekend, so this weekend, the Valentine's Day and her birthday kind of thing. But we couldn't work it out. The dates didn't match on it, and it was all booked out because it's Maldives and everyone goes there apparently on Valentine's Day. And then I was like, I'd rather come here to Uzbekistan and that moved that back. But now I'd probably be there in Ramadan. So let's see how that works out. But yeah. So I think hopefully the next time I come to your podcast with a few checklists done, then I can
yeah.
say which one I would go again.
Sure. For sure.
One thing I'm looking forward to though is Turkey. I haven't been there. Because I want to go there for extended amount of time. I don't want to go there just for a week. So I want at least like a 3-week plan there. So that's something I've been looking forward to. Hopefully, let's see when we go.
Right. I'm gonna be honest here, though. I see how excited and pumped you're about traveling, but I'm really having trouble relating to that experience because I'm the complete opposite of you. I'm a kind of a guy who does not like traveling at all. Like I like the city. I'm like I don't want to travel anything like 10 mile outside the city.
Oh my, I would never.
Yeah, it sounds boring, but I kind of like the idea of like staying in one place and grinding it out and just working and working and working. But I at the same time think I might be missing out so much.
You
with
are, definitely. It's just, the thing is, for example, this trip for me, it's very short. And the only reason I'm here is because I had a midterm break at school. Working in a school, you get a winter break, you get a spring break, you get a summer break. So you do have those kind of places where you could, those kind of timelines where you could actually stop the grind and go. Because I try not to, like, I went to Saudi in my winter break. This is my midterm break. And I might come back in my spring break because you have the spring festival, right? No, what's it called? The Persian New Year. I forgot the name for it.
Nowruz.
Yeah. So
Nowruz.
I might come back for that because I've only visited Bukhara yet. So Anas told me that you really need to go to Samarkand and places like that. So I was like, let's. So for your, I think you need to. It's like a refresher. It's just a weekend off.
So if I were to pack my things and go traveling, which country do you think I should hit first?
Depends on what kind of things do you like. Do you want to, for example, if you're already living in an old historic kind of thing, go to something fast paced. Go visit like LA for a weekend. You have your brother there as well, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
pop in to say hi. And
But getting
this,
visa is not gonna be that easy. It's not gonna be.
if not, then do something. For example, go to wait. Let me think.
I'd probably start with Dubai, Emirates.
You've never been?
No,
No, then you have to.
yeah, I have
You
to go
have
there.
to.
Right, right,
We'll tell you all the places you need to go. Don't worry.
right. Oh,
You
thanks.
have to.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Dubai is super fast paced, but I thought you'd already been. That's why I was like, go to the States.
The only country I've been to, foreign country I've been to, is the United States, and I went there back in 2019 as part of a work and exchange program, work and travel exchange program, student exchange program, and that was about it. And even when I was in the U.S., I did not do any traveling at all. So my plane landed. I caught a bus to the island I was gonna stay on, and I went there, worked the entire summer, packed my things, and returned home. And all my other friends who were doing the same program traveled nearly all states in the U.S.
I think you haven't found the right travel buddy.
Mm-hmm.
So all my travels till date have been with someone, with a group of friends, or with one friend. Now one trip with my mom and things like that. But 2025, I thought I'd solo travel. But to ease my way into it, I was like, that let me check off a couple places. Like visiting Anas is like he knows the place, so I didn't do any research. Honestly, I was just like, I'm gonna land, you take care of it. Going with my mom, I'm gonna like take her around so I will get used to the research and see how it is, and I'll have a person to lean on. So the next trip has to be a solo trip for me. I think you need to get a good travel buddy to travel with.
I'm actually totally down if it's like a business trip. So I can kill two birds with one stone. Like, right. Other than that, it's gonna be
So what
real
do you
hard.
do to like, for example, I always have reset weekends, even if I'm not traveling, because obviously there's a lot of things going on with traveling, the visa, the expenses, this and that. So what do you do on a reset weekend, let's say? Do you have a reset weekend?
Not really. All days of the week are the same for me. Well, what I do, I hit the gym every other day, so that should be good. And have these podcasts where I get to meet amazing people and let them tell
I
everything they've
feel
been doing.
like you need to start like a thing with your anyone that comes on your channel as a guest to suggest places to visit or where they're coming from and just blindly select one of the things
Yeah.
and go there. Or because see, if you're going to, for example, if you visit Dubai now, you'd have me, Anas, or maybe someone else that could actually guide you into it, and it's honestly going to be fun. And once you go, I feel like you'd be like, oh, it's not enough. You need to tap into it once. Just don't go for business. Go for travel once and see how it works out.
Right.
Or
For sure.
if it's bad, you can stop doing that. You can go for business trips afterwards.
For sure. I'll keep that in mind. So one more thing you mentioned on your CV about your personal interests is mindfulness and meditation. So let's get into that.
So I hate self-help books. Like, I know it's very hypocritical for my students to have that kind of said. I'm not a kind of person that would read about self-help books and be like inspired. Completely opposite to so many of my friends, to my brother. He's a big buff of self-help books. I'm not. I love fiction and escaping into that kind of thing. But one thing that I do for self-help is self-meditate and do journaling and mindfulness things. Like I'm one of the girls who's really big on the manifestation thing. You think it and it happens. There's so many researches done to back things up. Like you speak good things and it happens, or you speak good things and it does affect even For example, there was this research that there are two plants. One plant that when the researcher would walk across the plants, he would say good thing to one plant, and then when he would walk towards the other one, he would say bad things to the. They were like standardized things that he would say, but the one that he was saying good things to he would grow and it would be much more healthier than he was, and everything else was controlled. Same environment, same everything, same watering time, everything was same. So I'm a huge believer in saying good things to yourself. If that comes to you through self-help books, good. If that comes to you through meditation and reflecting back to yourself and things like that, or journaling, or I I say these things with my friends that we do a word vomit session. So what we would do is call each other up and just spew whatever we have. It's very cathartic, right? Catharsis kind of thing where you would just let things out and you can physically feel your body relax afterwards. In the self meditation thing also and wellness and these things, I feel like I don't know how I got into it. One of my friends introduced me. No, no, no. Actually, wait. Our university had this thing where if you are into psychology, there was one of these professors who said every psychologist needs to have their own therapist that they go to. And I was like, I've never tried therapy before. And I thought I was like the perfect human being before therapy. But when I actually started having therapeutic sessions and things like that, I learned so much about myself. And I don't think, for example, if you're feeling sick, you always go check in with the doctor. You're never like, let me breathe it out or something like that, right? Let me just think I'll be better. It doesn't work that way. Mental health is similar. So I feel like the therapist I had initially was a huge help. She was like, you just need to, because I'm the kind of person that, let's not go into details there, but like she suggested that that's better for you to journal. Because I like words, I like stories, I like things like that. So she was like, just journal about your life. And she did give me a lot of tips on how I should journal. For example, at the end of each day, I'm more of a night owl. So she suggested to unwind throughout the day, to unwind after a day, to journal at the end. So I would just have sections like it. The starting phase of my journaling to now has developed a lot. So now what works for me is having what I'm grateful for, aims and goals long term, and aims and goals for the next day. I'm not really, some days I would leave it, but then I would pick it up while I'm going to work, I would write it there. So, but it's for the night before. So it's for yesterday. But I think that's really helped me to self-reflect, and respect other values because everyone's so you're living your own life, right? You look at things from your perspective, and once you get to know yourself, I think you get to know others better.
Right, right. Know thyself.
Yeah.
Know thyself. That's what they say, right? I specifically asked you this question of all the other things mentioned on your personal interest section on your CVs because I do a little bit of sort of meditation thing as well. I'm a I'm a kind of a loner, and the thing I've lately been doing, this probably sounds weird. I'm not sure I should be saying that on record here, but it's talking to myself in the car, and that
My friend
happens.
does that.
That happens so involuntarily. I don't know how this has been happening, especially on those days when I have a lot of things pile up. I just start talking all of a sudden for no reason, and usually angrily. And I do my best to suppress it. I really try hard to keep it all in, but I just really can't.
That's the thing is, one of my friends does it as an alternate to journaling. Because for journaling, you need to sit down and write it.
Right.
While driving, you have the time to. She does it while driving as well, driving to work and back to home.
Right.
So it's like it's letting your feelings out. It's a process of catharsis. So you're letting things go, things like that. It is very meditative because you've left the load when you come into work. We can come into study or wherever you're going. So you've talked things out. If it's not with a person, you can talk things out with yourself. It's a very good like a psychological practice.
I just want to make sure that I'm not going
No,
crazy.
no, you're not. You're not.
It's a common practice. Many people do that. Sure. Anyway, right. We're about to wrap things up, but before we do that, there's this tradition we have on this podcast where we end things on a philosophical note, and there's a set of three questions I'd like to ask you before we uh, call it a day. So my first question here: can you define your personal philosophy in a few words?
My job's very like, how do I say it? It's like a deep and like thoughtful and kind of serious. But my philosophy in life is just let it go with the flow. Like I'm a very YOLO person. I have, when you translate it Islamically, it's like having a lot of tawakkul, belief in God. So letting things run the way they're supposed to run. Pray for the best, hope for the best, things will fall into place. And I've been really blessed in life with those things. So I'm a very, like, if you want to translate, it's not philosophical, it's not serious, because my life is serious enough with the things that I work for. So it's YOLO. When you have time, have fun. Live life. It's a one-time thing. Do your thing. Don't leave things. I've I was talking to my brother recently. One of my colleagues, I had a meeting with him that day, and he asked me for something. I cannot think of it, and I had to email it to him. And that night, when I didn't open my emails because it was first day of break, that morning I opened my email to email the thing to him, and we had an email that he passed away. And it was just, for me, I had emailed him already, and then I checked my other emails. And it was such a, like, it just reinforces the thing that you don't let things, like, don't say that when I have time, I'll do it. Make time. It's one life. You have to live it and let God, steer things into the direction and just let go. When you have that personality, you live life to the fullest, even if the times are hard, even if things are going, sideways or something, you will still live life. I mean, it's a very non-philosophical thing to say, but yeah.
I remember like a year ago or so, I used to be kind of a guy who tried to control everything, a control freak. That's what you call it. I wanted to make sure that all outcomes were certain. Right? I wanted to get the outcome I wanted, and I remember being so miserable.
You can't be happy if you want to control every outcome.
Yeah.
You need to, like, even when you do now, if you stop controlling it, you'd be much happier. That's what I told my brother when visiting Uzbekistan as well. This is the first stop of 2025, right? So I was like, I've lowered my expectations. When you lower it, I feel like I'm very big on New Year resolutions and things like that. So one year, my resolution was I had fallen out of the habit of reading. So that year, I was like, I'm going to read. And I read around 400 something novels. But I didn't give myself a target. I was like, as much as I can. This year, the target for traveling is as much as I can. Even if it's two countries, I'm going to be so happy with it. And I'm just going to, like, tell myself every night that, oh my God, I've done it. I've visited. It's just February and one's already done. And maybe the second one as well. So I'm not going to set high expectations. So my brother is also a control freak. So I tell him that as well. It doesn't work, but I tell him you'd be happier once you let things go.
Yeah, and there was a moment where I just flipped the switch and I said, I'm just gonna go with the flow, and I've been happy ever since. My life's been bliss. So, yeah,
You
really
need to
agree
just
with.
add traveling into it.
Yeah, for sure. After this podcast, I will 100%. Now, what is one piece of advice you would give your younger self if you could travel back in time?
To not fall under academic pressure. I mean, even though it's not like that pressure was not healthy for me and it did not push me to achieving higher grades. I still achieved the same grades. I was still a high average student. I wasn't like, for to be in a family with a person that excels a lot, my brother, my mom, my cousins, and everyone, I would tell myself that you would do good even if you're not the first in the class or or even if it's not an A star or things like that. And I feel like once when I was in uni and I let that thing go, I've been so much happier. Like I never cared about grades when I was in uni. I was working, I was learning, I was actually implementing things and things like that. I was much happier. But I think my younger self suffered a lot. Like, so
It's
I
not
would just
worth it,
tell her,
girl.
I would tell young myself to like, let it go. It's fine. You'll do fine.
All right. And assuming this podcast is going to be watched by your future self,
Ooh.
right? What's something you would want to say to her? If she's watching you right now,
I
probably.
hope you stop procrastinating. That's, and I hope you're happier and much more, you have stopped creating goals and focus more on the things that you're done. Because I'm a big goal, like New Year resolution, this resolution, manifesting your year and kind of things. I feel like I'm always running forward and not living in the moment kind of a person. So I would love my future self to be there. So it's a reminder if I'm not there, then.
Yeah. All right, Ms. Qurat, it's been amazing talking to you today. I enjoyed it so much. Hope you had fun here today
I
being
did.
on this podcast. And do you have any other final remarks you want to make before we end this podcast?
I love the energy. It feels like you're talking to a friend. First, I was like, there are cameras and there are lights and everything. But after we got into the flow, I was like, oh, it's so chill. I love the environment. I hope you get good guests. And I really hope that you travel. I would love to know when, when you come to Dubai. I'd suggest a few places and you need to travel.
And when I do, I'll be sure to start vlogging so you can see what
Yes,
I'm up to.
perfect.
Awesome. All right. Thanks a lot again
Thank
for coming on the
you.
podcast. All right, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like our content and subscribe to our channel. And if you got any comments, you can leave them in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.